Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, we recap the week that was, a split with the Dodgers and a sweep of the Rockies in Colorado. Pete Alonso is firmly in the MVP race. Jeff McNeil is heating up, and the rotation remains excellent. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel. Become a subscriber over there as well, or wherever you get your podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Spring is the season for new beginnings, and it's the best time to get behind the wheel of a sophisticated new Cadillac SUV. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And Joe, it's double good news to kick off the show, maybe triple good news. First off, we have our sweepstakes winner that is going to take home the Athlete Logos neon sign. You got to stay tuned for that. We're going to reveal that later in the show. The second thing is, Joe, Mets coming off of a sweep in Colorado. And the third thing is your West Coast nightmares of having to stay up or just not trying at all, stay up late, are over, Joe. How are we feeling? Morale has to be just skyrocketing.
They're basically over. I think there's one more game that starts after 10 p.m. for the rest of the season. It's like a July game in San Francisco, I believe. So that is a huge boost to the morale because, honestly, I need to be breaking down these games with you on this show, and that gets very difficult when I can't physically stay up to watch them.
I'm not going to lie. You've done this show with me here at SMY long enough before we were at SMY. Now in entering my mid-30s, I actually feel it. Like, I used to be one of those people that it just didn't matter. The Mets could play till 3 a.m. and I'm going to stay up. The body literally starts to fight you and is like, we can't do this right now. I did fight through a lot of these games, but some of them, I had to kind of watch the rest of it in the morning. Now, the beauty of it is we live in this world where on YouTube, you could watch just about every inning and a recap. But it was a good week, Joe, for the most part, for the Mets. And not even just the split with the Dodgers, which was ups and downs as it is. But the Rockies, I want to know how you feel with how bad, like historically bad, the Rockies are this year. I actually wasn't looking forward to this series because to me it was either the Mets win and everybody goes, well, it was the Rockies, or the Mets lose. And it feels like a way bigger loss than one of 162. And at the end of it, none of that ended up happening because the Mets pummeled the Rockies. Some guys at the bottom of the order are showing signs of life, which we've been waiting for, where maybe, Joe, this was actually a little bit of a get-right series for certain players on the Mets, not only playing at Coors Field, but the level of competition that they faced. And as we always say with this Mets team, the sign of a good team is taking care of your business, and that's exactly what they did out in Colorado.
Connor, it's funny you say that because when I knew we were going to talk about the series, obviously, and I was going to shout out friend of the show, Evan Roberts. I listened to the Rico Bronia as well, and he said it maybe not quite as eloquent as you. I'm going to give you the credit, sir. But that's idea of there's just like no way to enjoy the Mets Rockies series, particularly because if they were to lose games, it would be catastrophic on the internet. And if they win, it's just like, so what? Worst team in baseball history. So there's really no winning from that standpoint. But purely baseball, they took care of business the way they needed to. And sure, they had a bunch of home runs, and some of them are, Colorado aided. It's not like 450-foot home runs grow on trees when they come back to Citi Field. But look, you face who you face the day that you're supposed to play baseball, and your job as a professional is to beat that team that day. And the Mets took care of business against, I don't care if they're the worst team in baseball history, whatever it may be. The Yankees lost the game to the Rockies. Right. The Rockies they won the series against, I know, another not so good team, but they won a series against the Marlins. Like,
they swept them.
These are at the end swept. That's right. But at the end of the day, they're Major League Baseball players that are being paid to do a job. And the Mets took care of business, and you just move on and take those wins and move forward.
That's exactly right. And there are things you could take away, obviously, even from a series against a lowly team. And that is the fact that I have no idea if this is going to lead to sustainable success for both Ronny Mauricio and Francisco Alvarez, but you'd rather see them have signs of performing against a level of a team like the Rockies than continue their struggles and just continue to ask yourself, when is this thing going to turn? Jeff McNeil has quietly been pretty good this season, but it was just louder in Colorado because he hit a couple home runs, which is not the biggest part of his game. And McNeil's OPS is now well over 800 at this point, and a guy that can give this team a really, really big boost, not just because of his position versatility, but if he can put the ball in play the way he has and get back to being a 280-ish kind of hitter for this lineup, and most importantly, drive some runs in, make things happen with runners in scoring position, that would significantly lengthen the lineup, Joe. And then also the fact that while all that was going on, the Mets got what they needed to get out of their big boppers at the top of the lineup. You know, obviously Pete Alonso is on a tear in June right now that is pretty unmatched. He's just, nobody can get him out, and it's not just the power. He's been phenomenal. Lindor, even with the broken pinky toe, comes through in a massive moment, and then the next day is running all over the base paths because that's just the kind of warrior Francisco Lindor is. And then Juan Soto has a game where he's on base 6 times, which is something he had never done in his career. And honestly, the body language from Soto is just in a totally different stratosphere. And that didn't start in Colorado. That was going on with the Dodgers as well. It feels like Soto is just settling in, and that's something we'd all been waiting for and knew would happen. So things are really clicking with this team right now. And, you know, they have a chance to kind of not replicate it because the Mets just, they can't win every single night. But the Nationals, who have more young talent than Colorado, but are still kind of a middle of the pack team at best with that young talent, the Mets go home to Citi Field, a place they've been dominant this year, and get the Nationals for 3 in a row here.
Going back, and we'll go through the couple players you named. When you say Jeff McNeil's been pretty good, I don't know if you realize, or a lot of people do, he is second on the team in OPS. He's only behind Pete Alonso. So as good a year as Francisco Lindor is having, and Soto's had his ups and downs, McNeil's besting both of them in OPS. So big shout out to Jeff, because we know the second half last year was a really good sign until he got injured. And then it was just like, oh, was that a fluke? And then he shows up and doesn't get off to the best start at the beginning of 2025. It was just like, oh, okay, well, I guess it was. And nope, we're getting, I think, closer and closer to not prime Jeff McNeil, not win batting title Jeff McNeil, but suitable everyday player that you can play all around the diamond. And that is an incredibly valuable player to have on your roster. And then when you look at Alonso and Soto reaching 6 times, he's off to a good start in June. Alonso's off to an excellent start in June. This is the first time, really, that Juan Soto and Pete Alonso have been clicking at the same exact time. And what it shows is that this offense, the potential that it has when you have these two behemoth type of hitters actually performing at the same time, it really could set the Mets up for serious success as we continue down through the 2025 season. That Dodger series, that was a split, could have easily been a sweep, but should have been a 3 out of 4 for the Mets. So a bit of a missed opportunity there, but they're trending in exactly the direction you want them to be.
I think why McNeil has gone under the radar, to your point, Joe, and this is largely what a lot of this team's criticisms or, magnifying glass has been on, because they've been so good that there's not a ton to break down, is he is one of the guys struggling with runners in scoring position now. He's only had 34 plate appearances with runners in scoring position, but he's batting 179 with runners in scoring position. So I think people have had loud frustrations with McNeil and the rest of the team in those spots besides Pete. But when you look at the overall production for McNeil, it's been really good. And the thing that jumps out to me is 58 plate appearances, Joe, where he swung at the first pitch, a 943 OPS when he's swinging at the first pitch. When he's attacking pitchers trying to get ahead of him, he's not only making them pay by being a hitting machine, but his slug is over 600 when he's swinging at the first pitch. So I think one of the odd things with the non-stars on the Mets this year, like, this hasn't been a problem for Lindor. I don't think this has been a problem for Pete. It had been a problem for Soto for a while, is a lot of guys are constantly letting pitchers kind of get a freebie against them. And McNeil is getting up to the plate and saying, you're simply just not going to do that. I'm going to swing at the first pitch about half the time. And he is, a near 950 OPS when he's doing that, Joe. That's when McNeil is just clearly at his best.
100%. When he was winning the batting title, that's what he did. He would punish first pitches. But the thing that I like about it is he focuses on what he's looking for on that first pitch. And if it's there, he attacks it. And if it's not, he still has the ability to work counts and work at bats. So it's almost like the best of both worlds. And when we talk about Brandon Nimmo, how it's sort of like he's been in between approaches, McNeil is, I think, a little more reliable in the sense of he knows what he wants and he attacks it. And if it's not there, then he'll foul pitches off. He'll take his walks. He'll work 6, 7, 8 pitch at bats. And that's crucial, especially when you have, you want to get these pitchers out of the game, right? That's still the old school thing. Get the starter out of the game, get into the bullpen. So as many guys as you could have that are either impacting the baseball early, which leads to runs created, or work pitch counts, build that up, and you get guys out of the game. So all good signs for Jeff McNeil.
All right, we can't talk about Pete Alonso enough on this podcast for good reason. Pete, inching his way here towards Darryl Strawberry's all-time Mets home run record here. He passed David Wright this weekend, and Wright, as gracious as ever, sending Pete a really nice video that they posted. It's great to see Wright just continues to be such an awesome ambassador for this club, and even as a guy like Pete passes a record, a standing of his in the books. But more interestingly, Joe, is in friend of the show, Will Salmon, who we've had on multiple times. He's as good as anybody when it comes to long form pieces and covering the team, all his stuff on The Athletic. And of course, a guy you can watch on SNY a lot. He had a really interesting piece, Joe, about what Pete is doing off the field. And what stood out to me, Joe, wasn't Pete's offseason, because when a guy like this is a classic kind of recycling bin in sports. When a guy gets off to an incredible start during a season, and I don't blame writers for doing this. These are the stories we want to read and hear told. You get the flashback. Oh, what did they do in the offseason that they look like this now? What was so unique about this story to me, Joe, and it's something that's gone on now that Pete's with Boris Corp as his agency. Pete is going into, or before he even gets to the ballpark, game plans from people that work with the Boris Corp agency. And a lot of people are reacting to this way. Is this concerning that he's doing something outside of the team? I read this as a little bit of, he shows up to the Mets meetings for that day and is already he's studying before even studying for the test. And now he's coming in with information that is beneficial specifically to him and how he can now apply that information to what the Mets are giving him. And we hear this on the broadcast, especially with Ronnie and Keith that just played in a different era. And sometimes they bring up, like, there's a lot of information to digest. Some guys like it, some guys don't. It's clearly working for Pete right now, Joe, that he is preparing before it's time to prepare. And this is just kind of elevating his game, where you kind of sit here as a Mets fan and you're thinking, this is awesome. I hope it goes on forever. And then the other side naturally to you is, are the Mets going to be able to retain Pete Alonso? What does the deal look like now? What excites me, Joe, is that even in his 30s now, it feels like Pete Alonso, who's always had physical talent, is mentally evolving as a hitter, where this isn't sustainable, although we'll see. Who am I to say that? But he might age a lot better than anyone, including David Stearns, even once thought.
He is taking his preparation to another level. And the thing with Alonso was, for up until the last 2 years where it's been a struggle for him, I think he just kind of got by being a hitter and not having to think as much. And then he ran to 2 years of struggles. And I think that has opened his eyes, and bringing Boris Corp in has opened his eyes. And that level of preparation is only a benefit for him now and in the future, as you said. And the one thing that I want to say is, I think the ultimate takeaway, because as you said, as good as things are going for the Mets, there's always going to be a segment that is looking for what is wrong. For a team that over the last 162 games has won more games than any team in the sport. And the spotlight, due to struggling with runners in scoring position, everything is geared towards Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes, the hitting coaches. And the piece was excellent by Will, as you mentioned, and a lot of fans' reaction is, well, what are those guys doing if he's going to outside? I would like to say Pete Alonso is not the only. There are many players that do what Pete Alonso's doing across Major League Baseball. So this is not unique to him. But for him, it is unique, if that makes sense, where it's just different and evolving his game. And as you said, Connor, evolving mentally, because that's important as you continue to grow as a baseball player. And we talked about this last week with that mailbag question about player development. You're never not developing because there's always that back and forth cat and mouse game of trying to one up each other. So any advantage that Pete Alonso could get, I support it. And clearly the results are bearing fruit for the Mets.
We talk about the starting pitching every week, and that'll be sprinkled in throughout the rest of the show. But it feels like that conversation, in the best way possible, Joe, is just very repeatable. So I kind of want to jump ahead briefly to Ronny Mauricio. He is such an interesting player to watch because you take one look at Ronny Mauricio and you're like, this guy looks as physically gifted as they come. He can hit the ball 112 miles an hour. He's got big time power. He moves really, really well for his size, and he's always had that kind of speed. He's actually maintained a lot of his speed as he's filled out over the years. And he's got a big time arm, Joe. He really, like, the arm stands out in the infield. He is somebody that clearly has some swing and miss problems and some pitch, I guess I would say, identification issues, as most players do. But man, Joe, he's one of those guys that it feels like at any given moment he can connect and change the game, where I'm going to be a little honest here, and this might be, over ambitious or jumping a little too early. I find myself more excited about Ronny Mauricio than Luis Angel Acuna, even Brett Beatty, who's been solid this year. And I'm not ready to wash away with what Vientos did last year, although it was so tough before he got injured this year. The raw tools that Ronny has, Joe, is something that I think has a lot of Mets fans looking around like, can this guy be the best of the four?
He could. He definitely could. He is a creative player. That's the best way, I think, to describe it. He's got the size that you want. He's got the general tool set that you want. The power is legitimate. I mean, we're talking, he has 30 home run potential. Like, he has very special batted ball data, and he's worked hard on getting some launch angle to make sure that the ball is elevated more often. The only thing to me, and I actually use this word on Mets Off Day Live, which if you didn't see that, go ahead and check it out. It's just a day later. You didn't really miss anything. To me, we're never going to confuse Ronny Mauricio's plate discipline and pitch recognition skills with prime Brandon Nimmo. But if you could get him to just lay off some stuff sometimes and walk once in a while, like that, to me, his pitch recognition skills and plate discipline is the only thing holding him back from superstardom. Like, everything else is there. So I am with you as far as excitement. There's no way you can't be excited when Ronny Mauricio steps up, because there is a legitimate chance, as you said, that the first pitch could go 456 feet and 112 off the bat. Unfortunately, the other side of the coin is he could flail out a pitch that is so far out of the strike zone, you're wondering what on earth was he looking at. So there's certainly some hit and miss, but Mauricio possesses sky high upside, and it's just a matter of being able to rein in that approach even just a little bit.
Feels like every week, Joe, the Mets make a move for a reliever that you just Google him and he's got a 5+ ERA and he's bounced around, and then you next thing you know, he's on there, on the mound for the Mets, and everybody's like, who is this? And he might find it, he might not. But David Stearns, and we like to call this segment Bullpenning with David Stearns, he's a volume guy. And a lot of the great GMs across baseball with bullpens are volume guys. They are just trying to hit on a couple lotto tickets because that's all you need to do compared to the stalwarts, the mainstays, the headliners of your bullpen. Edwin Diaz, of course, comes to mind, but the Mets have a lot of guys like that. Justin Garza and Julian Merryweather, Joe, the two names that are the most recent additions. Merryweather was somebody that stood out to me because I remember in 2023, this guy was a legitimate weapon for the Cubs. And it's a little jarring when you look at 2023 that he not only had an ERA that was 3.38, but he was striking out over 12 batters per 9 innings. And I remember he had a stretch run where he was untouchable, and everything, including the strikeout numbers and the ERA, have gone in the wrong directions. But Joe, who are these guys, and how did they kind of fit with Stearns' philosophy of volume shooting in the bullpen?
I think the philosophy that David Stearns has is these relievers, you're going to bring them in, you're going to give them opportunity. Like Merriweather is going to AAA Syracuse, so he's not going to be on the big league roster, so he'll serve more as depth. But what you're trying to do, as you said, you have your stalwarts, your Edwin Diaz's, your Ryan Staneks, the guys that you know are in the back end of your bullpen. Around that, you're just honestly trying to find streaks out of guys. Like Jose Castillo, who they brought in from Arizona, wasn't pitching particularly well for Arizona. So far, 8 shutout innings for the Mets. That doesn't mean Jose Castillo is going to be a lefty in the Mets bullpen for the remainder of the season. He could find a cold stretch, then he'll get replaced with somebody else. But they will continue to bring in guys and give them opportunities. And Merriweather specifically, what you're really looking at is it's power. It's a fastball that will get up to 99, up into the upper 90s. He's nothing but struggled since 2023. So I think there's some work to be done there on a guy that, I think he's 33 years old now.
He is,
still.
yeah.
Yeah. So a bit of a flyer there. Justin Garza, this one's a little fun. So they picked him up from the Giants via trade for cash considerations over the weekend. And he actually got added to the big league roster. He'll be at Citi Field tonight. ERA over 6 in AAA with the Giants. Mets trade for him and are essentially instantly putting him on the big league roster. And when I look up kind of what he does, it's a 4-seam fastball, average 96.2 miles an hour in AAA, up to 98. So a hard thrower. He's got a sweeper, a cutter, a sinker, a slider. So he's got a bit of a mixed bag of pitches. The batted ball data, not ideal, but some of that could be circumstantial and a little funky. But at its core, what David Stearns got in Justin Garza is a guy who throws hard, a guy who strikes out guys. He had a 25% strikeout rate in AAA and limits walks. He had a 7.9% walk rate in AAA. So at its core, it's just like, let's bring in someone who can throw at some velocity. He's going to miss some bats. He's not going to just put people on base via the walk, and take our chances that we get some better batted ball luck at the next level. And, Justin Garza could be here today and gone tomorrow, or maybe a month from now. We're like, man, can you believe Justin Garza's still in this bullpen pitching to a 2.78 ERA or whatever? But this is what David Stearns has always done, and this is what he will always do.
Yeah, and who could argue against it at this point right now, right? I like your look at it, chasing streaks, because it's one of those things where you could watch every single Met game and you look up and you're like, oh, this guy's thrown 7 scoreless innings in a row. You don't even realize sometimes, and you do realize in the end, accumulation of those across such a long season that is baseball is pivotal, where, the NBA and the NHL are different in this. Football is not, but football is such a tighter season and there's more preparation throughout the week. It's hard to constantly be chasing depth and contributors, and especially baseball, there's not a lot of days off. And you could argue that Stearns is maybe the best at it in the sport right now. When you think of what he did with the bullpen last year, the way he acquired Luis Torrens, what he's now doing this year, and there's no, December is not just the time Stearns changes the team. The Mets are constantly evolving on the margins, and that has kind of changed the outlook of the team's success right now, Joe.
Hey, Connor, you win at the margins. I know, yes. Of course, Juan Soto is a big deal. Getting superstars makes a big difference in winning and losing. But you win at the margins in baseball. It's a different sport than the NBA, where you just grab 3 superstars and off you go. Right. You'll probably be in the Eastern or Western Conference Finals, and that's just kind of how the sport works. Baseball is just a different beast, and if David Stearns is not the best at it, he is right smack dab in that conversation.
Let's go down on the farm and look at somebody that hopefully in a couple of years can be helping this team. Carson Bench, Joe. It's funny to me because we've been doing this together long enough. I remember a time where the Mets would take a guy in the first round, and it felt like every single week we'd be talking about that guy. The Mets farm system now has evolved where there's enough different names acquired from different places not just the way they spend an international free agency, but obviously they're recruiting in that, their drafts, them capitalizing deeper in drafts. Benj, though, of course, last year's first round pick, 19th overall in the 2024 MLB draft, Joe. You don't hear a ton about him, but he is tearing up Brooklyn right now. He is living up to the expectations of a college bat taken in the first round. OPS is over 900. He's hit 4 home runs. Not a guy that has a ton of power, but enough power. He's stolen 11 bases. He's hitting almost 300. He's getting on base over 41% of the time right now here, Joe. Benj is somebody that, like, when you look at down the road, an older Brandon Nimmo, and of course, we're a little far from that, but Juan Soto being a DH one day, this is someone that could be in a corner outfield for the Mets and be a significant contributor for this team.
He is the quietest first-round pick, performing like a first-round pick that I think I've ever covered.
I agree.
And I think that's a credit to, as you said, the Mets system. But I've been so impressed watching his at-bats day in and day out. As you said, the approach at the plate is great, as evidenced by the .416 on-base percentage. Like, his at-bats are advanced. They're true professional at-bats. And there is more power in there. We talk about Brooklyn and the difficulties in hitting true home runs there, but he has 14 doubles. He has 4 triples. And I'll tell you, the one thing that stood out, it's a very tough place to hit. And when he gets his way to Double-A, which I imagine is not incredibly far away, I think you will see the home run numbers start to trickle up for him. And what has stood out the most that I kind of didn't know when the Mets were drafting him, I knew he was advertised as a good athlete. He's a better athlete than I thought he was when the Mets got him. He's got 11 stolen bases. As I mentioned, the 4 triples. So, like, he's putting the ball in a gap, and he's got the speed to make it around. And the Mets are sending him in center field a lot, and it actually has been okay. I still think long-term right field is like his ideal home, but certainly he could play left field as well. I've been nothing but impressed with Carson Benj, and I think he's a guy that he's going to be ranked really, really high when I do my prospect update again, maybe a month or so from now. But man, nothing but good things to say about Carson Benj, and he's just in that loaded Brooklyn lineup that we're about to talk about.
It is funny to me because I think about the pre-draft process. We always have Jim Callis on before the draft, who is the best, and Jim's nice enough to come on this show every year. And we always ask him, like, what are you thinking? And it's tough when the Mets are picking 19th. Like, it's not like they're picking 6th, and it's like, here's the 3 guys they're in on. And Benj was the first or second name Jim said. And I know he was somebody you were in on as well, Joe. And I remember Jim and you specifically were like, he's got to make it there, though. And that's far from a lock. And exactly what we hope for happens. Benj makes it to the Mets pick. The Mets take him. And he's been phenomenal so far. And like you said, it's almost like no one cares. I guess that's what happens when the Mets are winning at the clip they're winning at, and they're star loaded, and they have so much talent in the outfield anyway. But it just kind of piles on to it's a really good time to be a Mets fan. Head to Coney Island this weekend for great giveaways and post-game fireworks on Saturday night. Brooklyn Cyclones baseball. Amazing starts here. For details and tickets, visit brooklyncyclones.com. You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SMY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast. Joe, let's review our scoreboard predictions from last week. The first one was over-under. Push for 8 Juan Soto hits. We both went under. Juan Soto had 7 hits, so we both get a point. This is the thing with Soto. He walks so much. You got to be really careful with this one. Yes or no, will Ronny Mauricio hit a home run? We both said no. Mauricio hit one into the third deck. No points for either of us. Yes or no, will Starling Marte hit a home run? I said no. Joe said yes. Can you believe it? Starling Marte hit a home run. That is the busiest my mentions have been on Twitter in maybe years.
I was going to say since like draft day or something, but maybe years.
I was listening in the car on the radio, and I got where I was going, parked, took out my phone, and was like, oh no. Between our group chat, the Mets Pod listeners who are just so awesome, just dying laughing. What a moment. Terrible moment for me. Great moment for you and Starling Marte.
Connor, you owe like a statement, like a true statement, an apology, something. This is your moment, and you just let me take it from you.
It's just a really bad omen for me in this game. because you're a two-time champion back-to-back in the scoreboard. I'm looking for my first win. I've had a nice season. I've really put in the effort. I have a data team crunching the numbers and working on the spreadsheets every week to supplement me. I'm like Pete Alonso. I worked with an external group. I come into the week with a plan every time, and this one fell through the cracks, and it's not good. Over under 16.5 runs against the Rockies. We both took over. The Mets scored 25 runs. So they smashed this number. We both get a point. Over under 1.5 Pete Alonso home runs. Joe, you went under. I went over. Pete Alonso hit 5 home runs. 5 home runs.
Oops.
Yeah, it's all right. I got a point on that one. Over under 4.5 Mets wins. Joe, you went over. I went under. The Mets won 4. I got another point. You take 3 points home this week, Joe. I take 4 points home. I lead the season by 1. It is 31-30. Quick note here before we make new predictions. We ditched the how many starters go 6 bet for 1 week. And guess what happens? They crushed the over. 5 of 6 starters went over. The only miss was Tyler McGill, who, of course, went 5 innings on Sunday. So it's I'm glad we took a break from that one. It's my least favorite category just because it's aggravating to watch. 6 games this week for the scoreboard. 3 against the Nationals, 3 against the Rays. Over-under pushes at 8 for Juan Soto hits. Deep breath here, Joe, because I am going over for Juan Soto hits. He's got his old friends, the Nationals. I never play the over on this one, and I'm rewarded for it all the time because my take is 1, it wasn't hitting that great anyway. 2, he walks so much. I just feel like Juan Soto is comfortable, and against the Nationals, I think he's got a lot in him for this one. I'm going to take the rare over here, Joe.
I have taken the over when Juan Soto wasn't looking as hot at the plate. So what am I going to do now? I'm just going to take the under and just figure the walks. It's the conversation we have weekly when we talk about Juan Soto, right, Connor? He can have a perfectly fine week where he doesn't have 8 hits because he can walk 7 times or something like that.
Right.
So I will go under. But, man, if Juan Soto looks like he's heating up, and it won't shock me if you get a point on this one.
Yes or no, Joe? Will Francisco Alvarez hit a home run?
I will say no, he will not hit a home run. That home run in Coors was very encouraging. Straightaway center field, 450 feet. But one thing I want to take into account is his partner is having a baby. So they're like any day now. So there's a possibility that he misses a game, 2 game, whatever that time frame will be, miss a couple games. And then Torrens plays some. So, yeah, I'll go with a no on home run for Francisco Alvarez this week.
I'm going no as well. It's the same spiel I kind of give each time. He's a catcher, so he doesn't play every day. He hits at the bottom of the order. He's not hitting well. He's probably plus 700 to plus 900 at a home run the 3 or 4 times he'll play, not even counting you pointing out that he could take a mini leave. I'll go no for Alvarez hitting a home run. Over-under pushes at 1 for Francisco Lindor stolen bases with a broken toe. I'm going to push here, Joe. I think Lindor has 1 in him. He's somebody that it doesn't really seem to faze him that he's running or playing with this broken toe, and Lindor is aggressive, but I don't think he's somebody that needs to steal more than 1 base. He's not somebody that, they need to run themselves out of innings. And the Mets have been very, very tactical when they steal. I think they have still the highest steal percentage in terms of being safe in baseball. So I'll go with the push.
I will go with the over, and I think that might be a little bit risky. What I did appreciate in the Colorado series, they didn't even throw to second on either time he stole in that game. They just let him just go ahead and take it. It was very kind of and courteous of them. They knew he had a broken toe, so they didn't want to mess with him. So that was very nice of them. But I will go over. I really like what Lindor is doing at the plate. And, the more times he gets on base, the more opportunities he will have to steal. So if he could sneak out 2 this week, it wouldn't shock me at all.
All right, Joe, here's one that our producer, Jeff, he really cooked in the lab with this one. It's partially evil, but it's a fun one. Over-under pushes at 4 for Paul Blackburn innings.
This is really tough, Connor.
That's the point. You have no idea how they're going to use him.
So depending on how the schedule lines up, there's a very real chance that he's going to do the same piggyback deal that he did with, right behind the Tyler McGill. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they actually purposely line it up that way, where it's McGill will go his time and Blackburn will go his. And the perfect amount of time for me seems like 5 from McGill and 4 from Blackburn. Saved the rest of the bullpen that day. So I will push at 4, which is a very exact number, but I will push.
I'm going to go under. And I'm with you where this is not an easy one. You're right. It makes sense. McGill typically throws 5 innings, and then you want Blackburn to finish the game. The problem is, for as great as Blackburn looked starting against the Dodgers, he did not look good in those innings against the Rockies, which is a really hard thing to do for a starting pitcher. He gutted through it. The Mets scored a million runs that it didn't matter, but he just wasn't fully in command. And credit to Blackburn for gutting through it in a role that he's not accustomed to. So I'm going to go under here and say that I don't know if they're going to be playing that level of blowout where they're going to push him to just get through that. Over under 1.5, Joe. Pete Alonso home runs. I am going over. Who am I to doubt the man?
I made a mistake last week, and I'm not making that same mistake again. Fool me once. Yeah, not going to go with the fool me twice. So I will go over on Pete Alonso home runs. And if he doesn't hit 2, so be it. But I'm not going to be the guy that says he's going to hit 1 or 0 and then he hits 5 again.
Yeah, I mean, he could do this in one game. That's the problem with taking the under on Pete Alonso's home run marker. I wonder if he's not going to hit 5 this week. Famous last words. If he has 3 this week, is Jeff going to jump up this number to like 2.5? And then you're sitting there and you're like, well, of course I'm going to take the under. But then you're like, well, if he could easily still do it. So
you just keep doing it.
You just keep doing it. Maybe Pete, this is just who he is now. You can kick us off with the last one, Joe. Over under is 4.5 for Mets wins. Once again, 3 against the Nats, 3 against the Rays.
I'm actually going to go under this week. I have been going over, and it's actually been relatively successful for me, and it should have been this past week, as I mentioned kind of towards the top of the show. But I'll go under. I will say they go 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, win a couple series at home, and 4 wins.
I'm going under as well, as I did last week. And that's fine. The Mets, this is not sustainable for anyone right now. The Nationals have a lot of young talent. They haven't really figured out, and I'm really interested to watch them this week. They haven't really figured out how to transition all this young talent into wins. And I think outside of Mackenzie Gore, a lot of that has been pitching woes at times. And then you look at the Rays, who have been playing better lately and are always a punchy team, even when they're not one of the great teams in baseball. So that's a big. The Mets winning 5 of 6 or 6 of 6 this week is a really, really big task. I'd be blown away. So I'll go under as well. Okay, the time has come to reveal the winner of the New York home run Apple neon sign from Athlete Logos. If you missed last week's show, we had Dan Abrams on. We got to show off the sign. It looks incredible. Drum roll, please. The winner is Caitlin Hinsey, a.k.a. at Caitlin Hinsey 13 on Twitter. Congrats, Caitlin. An SMY social media rep will be reaching out to you soon. Enjoy the sign, and everyone keep listening to our shows because we'll be announcing the Mets Pod hat giveaways in the weeks ahead. But once again, congrats to Caitlin. That sign is pretty sick. All right, Joe, let's close out with the mailbag. The first one is a 5-star review from Strongman6. Thank you very much for the 5-star review. Why can't the Mets seem to develop any high leverage relievers from within their system? I guess Jose Butto is pretty good, but he is the only reliever on the roster who was originally drafted or signed by the Mets. This is fascinating, Joe. Out of all the things to kind of sit there and be, I'll ask Strongman a question for this before I toss to you, Joe. And I haven't done the work to know, but I will kind of dive into this throughout the week because now I'm just curious. How many guys across baseball, across bullpens, like how many bullpens across baseball do you think are 65% plus homegrown players in good bullpens? Do not send me a bullpen that is a team that just spends $0 and brings up a guy from AA that has a 7 ERA all the time and say, well, that's a homegrown bullpen. I think that's just not the game in this era of the bullpen. The game of the bullpen is chasing guys that are cheap, that have stuff that other places haven't unlocked, and that's fine. So the Mets are developing starting pitching right now, and that's okay.
I think so. I don't know the answer to your question. I think that's something we will have to research and circle back and see next week. We'll bring it up on the show next week, how many teams actually are built that way current day. But if you just go on Twitter any given day, there's a reliever that's designated for assignment by somebody. Like relievers are just churned from team to team to team. So it's really hard to find reliability when you're dealing with, at its core, relievers are just such a small sample size. Like if you have a strong year as a reliever, you throw like 60 innings. And ultimately that's not a big enough of a sample size to, keep someone on your roster all year, unless they're, of course, dominating. But what I will say is the Mets are working towards developing relievers. And some of those are going to be guys that right now are starting pitchers that end up in the bullpen. And there's a couple relievers that are pretty interesting that are in the upper levels now. A guy like Felipe De La Cruz, who is converting from starter to bullpen. Lefty, up to 97, has a slider. Dom Hamill, a guy that we've talked about on this show seemingly for years, he's transitioned into the bullpen with AAA Syracuse. Then you go down a level to AA, a guy like Dylan Ross, who you'll see an article coming on SNY.TV. He's one of the 5 guys that have broken out this year, and I wrote a little bit about him. It's a fastball, upper 90s, up to 101, nasty low 90s splitter, and a upper 80s gyro slider. Pure reliever prospect. Ryan Lambert, guy that we highlighted around the spring breakout game, and I've talked about, Mr. Drank cartons and cartons of eggs, kind of like Rocky, having a really good year at the AA level. Needs to rein in some of the command, but that's another upper 90s power arm. So I think the Mets are getting closer where they'll have some internal options for the bullpen. But I agree with your premise, Connor, that at its core, bullpens are largely just grabbing guys and trying to make streaks out of their performances.
I guess the answer is there's just no specific way to do it. Because to be fair to Strongman, like you look at the Giants, who have the best bullpen ERA in baseball right now, and the Mets are second, by the way. The Giants largely, with their main guys, their high leverage guys, are a homegrown bullpen. The Mets are second in the sport, and the Mets are not. Now you look at outside of Eric Miller, who they got from the Phillies. He was a 4th-round pick of the Phillies, and he's been dominant for the Giants this year. Their other 4 high leverage relievers are homegrown Giants players. Now their closer, Ryan Walker, has been really bad, so I don't really know if you want to count him. But Tyler Rogers, we know how good he is. Camilo Duvall, Randy Rodriguez, those other 3 high leverage arms who have been phenomenal are homegrown. So it kind of shows that you can do it both ways. So it's an interesting conversation. The Mets obviously would like to have homegrown relievers, but credit to them because of the farm system or the lack thereof in relief help that Stearns acquired. He's going externally and figuring it out. So a really interesting topic, though, and I like the question because it kind of shows it's one of the weird areas of the sport that you can look down different avenues. All right, this one from the YouTube comments, Michael Brooks NYC. Hey, guys, it'll never happen, but it should. I'm, of course, referring to the picture-perfect trade deadline acquisition to put the Mets rotation over the top. Jacob deGrom. He's healthy. He plays for a 29-34 team, and he looks just like the pitcher who won 2 Cy Young Awards. Adam Ottavino did an excellent breakdown of deGrom the other day on MLB Network, explaining how dialing it back has returned him to the pitcher he was in 2018 and 19. What do you think? P.S. Jonah Tong needs to be promoted to AAA. Let's go. Love the P.S. We have no arguments there. Joe, you want to do the honors or should I?
I'll take this one, Connor. So the stuff he has dialed back the fastball velocity. I have no idea how intentional or unintentional that is. As we know, he is certainly getting into his mid-30s. He is not the same pitcher that he was in 2018 and 2019. Like, he's very good, but he's not missing bats at the rate that he did, back in his prime. He had a start I think it was maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah. He had 0 strikeouts, not 1. So it's not the same in that sense. What I will say, I don't think Jacob deGrom would waive his no trade clause under any circumstance to come back to New York. Like, a lot of times when we talk about free agency, it's just like, the market just didn't work out or whatever. I don't think Jacob deGrom had any interest in staying in New York. I think he's very happy in Texas. I think that's kind of the place that he's going to hunker down, and post playing, we'll just almost never hear from Jacob deGrom again. He'll be in his land and he'll be enjoying himself in Texas. But I'm happy that he's bouncing back. This one doesn't feel, and it'll never happen is how the question was prefaced.
Yes.
I agree that it'll never happen, but it is a fun discussion to think, because when you think about the trade deadline, the rotation certainly doesn't stand out as something you think the Mets are going to be aggressive towards. But if they're able to acquire somebody that can be a definitive, this is the game one starter in a playoff series, I think they'd have to at least be open to it.
This is one of those that a lot of things can be true at once. And I love the way it's written out from Michael, because I agree it'll never happen. Here's the weird thing, Joe. Number one, the Rangers should trade Jacob deGrom if they can get something for him. He is about to be 37. Yeah, he turns 37 next week. So happy early birthday to Jacob deGrom. He still has 2 regular years left on that massive deal, and then a mutual option in 2028. So this is entering that, Verlander, Scherzer level contract pretty soon. Yes, he's been very good this year. He has been very different. Jacob deGrom is striking out 8.7 hitters over 9 innings. The last time he wasn't in the double digits was 2016. So, and that's okay. It's okay if you change who you are as a pitcher, but 10 years ago, basically, is the last time he was getting by this way. His home runs over 9 is actually over 1, which is very uncharacteristic for him. I mean, in 2022, it was over 1, but before that, the only other time in his career it was over 1 was 2017. So he is giving up more home runs and striking out less people, and he's turning 37. If the Rangers can get something for deGrom while they're going through this period, then they should. They offload the money and they can get a good return. I don't know if they can. And I'm not saying deGrom is not a really good pitcher anymore, because he clearly is, but he's different. And you just wonder what that'll look like at age 38, 39, and 40. The Mets side of it would be the movie script. If deGrom came back and the Mets won a World Series and he started the game that they, in a World Series that they won, it's perfect. But you nailed it, Joe. This is tough because I think a lot of Mets fans don't want to accept this. And I probably have, in a way that's almost harsh at this point. I think I'm on an island most of the time with this take. deGrom didn't want to be here. And because deGrom didn't want to be here, which is fine, that's your right as a free agent. He got a great deal in a place, and as much as he was hurt, you got to go to a place that won a World Series. I don't look at deGrom as a retire the number level Met. I don't. I think, and the argument isn't just that they didn't win enough when he was here, because that's not his fault. The guy won 2 Cy Youngs. He was an incredible, incredible player to watch. But David Wright is now an ambassador of the Mets, right? Truly an ambassador of the organization. Just the way that after his great playing days, and he's a great broadcaster, Keith Hernandez is an ambassador of the Mets organization. Jacob deGrom, it's almost awkward at this point how badly he didn't want to be in New York. And if you're a deGrom fan, you're listening to this and it's not what you want to hear, I get it. Like, we all loved watching Jacob deGrom play. We all wanted to see him win a World Series and be a Met for life. He didn't want to be. And that's okay. That's his choice. But with choices come consequences. And the consequences here are that he's looked at differently from me in terms of how I view him as a Met. He's a guy, I appreciate what he did. I think it's incredible what he was able to accomplish. He's not on the level of retire the number kind of player. And I think, Joe, a lot of people don't agree with me on that. But the hard truth that you have to accept is he didn't want to be here, and I doubt he ever wants to come back.
Jacob deGrom very well may be the best pitcher I've ever seen in a Mets uniform. And if he's not, he's very much on that short list. But yeah, look, everyone has their time in which they are done with an organization. The amount of lifelong anything on any team is just such a short list that you could name the players that essentially do it. So it's nothing against deGrom. And I don't think deGrom hated the Mets. I think he just was over New York. He didn't want New York. That's just not the kind of person that he is. So if the Rangers can find their way out of a couple more years of $40 million plus a year or whatever deGrom's making, Good on them. It's just not going to be back here.
No, it's a fun idea. I appreciate the question. And I think Michael is being honest. He's like, this is never going to happen. And it would be a Cinderella story. It would be a Cinderella story. How about a mini Marte mailbag? A bag within the bag here, Joe, at my expense. Travis Cherry 3749 from YouTube. I laughed so hard when Marte went yard against the Dodgers. Point to Joe for going for it. Love it. Let's go Mets. Met fan 3105 on YouTube. I feel Starling Marte is being wasted as a bench player for the Mets. What do you think he could get in the trade market? I think that one's pretty quick, Joe. The Mets, had feelers out there. Does anyone want Starling Marte in the offseason? Nobody did. And I've been very consistent with this take. I want Starling Marte on this team this year. I think you need different veteran presences throughout the organization. And I think he is perfect in his role right now. And I would not just send him out. And he performs in the playoffs. Everybody magically forgets that Starling Marte is a playoff performer. But then in October, everybody loves when Starling Marte drives in an important run.
For sure. There's no reason to trade Starling Marte. You're not really going to get much of anything of consequence for him. You're just dumping him off. And let's not discount, too, the relationship that he has with Juan Soto. I think that has helped Soto get a little more comfortable in New York as having a guy like Marte around. And he serves a purpose. Look, this is a team trying to win a World Series. You need to be as deep as possible with veteran players that you can rely on in really any spot. And Starling Marte, it's a lot of hit and miss. Some of it's bad, some of it's good. But look, this is not the time to be dumping Starling Marte.
Starling Marte is obviously a better player than this guy was, but massive Juan Uribe 2015 vibes. Like we need a chief leader of vibes and pinch hitting and veteran presence. And Marte can do that. This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Spring is the season for new beginnings, and it's the best time to get behind the wheel of a sophisticated new Cadillac SUV. The beginning of something exceptional starts now. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. Remember to subscribe to the show. You'll never miss an episode. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You could leave us a review with a question. We look for it for our mailbags, of course, and you can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel. We have some really cool graphics showing off stats. You got to see the neon sign in advance. So if you want to watch on YouTube, it's definitely a pretty cool format for that. Become a subscriber to SMY's YouTube channel. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll catch you next week.